exploring the investment landscape with a guru's wisdom and a strategist's insight. Good Life Companies presents The Market Enthusiast with Noah Brooks and Chris Needs.
Welcome back to another edition of The Market Enthusiast. I'm Noah Brooks, and of course, with me today, Chris Needs. We pushed back a week, everybody, due to Thanksgiving. So a warm holiday welcome to everybody joining us after their Thanksgiving holiday. I know coming back for me, I'm a little bit bloated. I definitely put on some weight. How about you?
It happens. Yeah, you're eating all that food and maybe a couple drinks, maybe if that's your thing. Watching a lot of football.
Yeah.
At least that's what I was doing.
So unpopular opinion. I don't know that I really love turkey that much.
I have heard that more this year than any other year. I had said that to you. I've heard it from multiple people in the family, and I don't know.
I asked a bunch of people over the last 2 weeks. I one lady I was driving with, and I said, "Hey, can I ask you a personal question?" And I know she thought it was.
She backs away.
Yeah, she backed away a little bit, and she said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you really like turkey?" And she goes, she looks at me, she says, "Once a year, yeah, at Thanksgiving." And I've talked to a lot of people, and they're all kind of in the same camp. They're like, we do it because it's tradition. So this year we had, of course, we had turkey on Thanksgiving, and then the day after we did like a seafood fest. Some fried clams and oysters and some halibut and a bunch of different stuff. And I think everybody really loved it because we didn't have to eat any turkey.
I don't know if I can agree with you on that, but I do agree it's a lot of work. It's tough to do for people at home, takes a lot of time. Maybe something better outsourced to restaurants. And I think that's why people get like fresh turkey and sandwiches like that they get from restaurants. They don't just cook up a turkey on a Tuesday night to have a turkey sub.
Like the Wawa gobbler?
Yeah.
Is that where you outsource it to?
I tried the Arby's turkey gobbler, deep fried turkey gobbler. That was interesting.
Was it good?
Yeah.
So we actually do a deep fried turkey.
Yeah.
So we brine it for a few days and then dry it for a day or two. And then we use a deep fryer. And I think as far as the turkey goes, I don't know that it can get much better if you're into turkey. So we did turkey on Thanksgiving.
Such a hater.
And then Saturday we did the kind of the ubiquitous hot open faced turkey sandwich with some stuffing and obviously turkey, and then gravy and cranberry all on the plate, and you kind of mix it together. Like that to me is kind of a traditional turkey the day after, the weekend after Thanksgiving thing.
The definition of like a cheat meal. If you're on any sort of diet, you just throw all this stuff on your plate.
Oh, and
reheating it all on the same plate too. Just throw it all on there.
I had to actually borrow the microwave from the office.
It was a mystery for a little while. I was like, where did the second microwave go?
So we don't have a microwave. I'm pretty sure that they cause cancer. And so we don't have one. And so I was like, hey, we really should get a microwave just for those 2 or 3 times, on Thanksgiving. So we plugged it in outside, away from everybody. Everybody's going to think I'm crazy time when I say that. But we don't have one. I don't know. It's just, we don't have one. So the mystery around the office is, where was the extra microwave?
Now we know.
I forgot to bring it back.
Admitted live on air.
All right. So I said we missed a week. We have some great stuff to cover today. Let's talk about what the best performer is since the election. You probably know, not the single best performing stock, but asset class.
Bitcoin,
right?
Crypto.
So
I mean, you talk about some of those trash coins that did like multiples of even Bitcoin, and it was up over 40% for the month.
Yeah. So since the election, since the end of business on the election till today, Bitcoin's up just over 39%, something like that. Which, for, if you want to call it an asset class, is one of the best, the top performing, certainly not the individual stock. And some of the stocks that we follow, one of the best individual stocks has been Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a surprise to anybody or not. I doubt it's a surprise to Elon, but it's interesting.
He's fully aware.
Oh, you think he's fully aware?
Fully aware.
Yeah. How about that pay package thing?
Yeah, for the second time.
Yeah.
He got a Delaware court shut him down, and it was for now, because it's from
2000
options from 2018.
Yeah, 2018.
It's now worth over $100 billion.
Yeah. Well, the number I saw was 56 billion. I don't know if it was at the time, but for you're saying those same options are worth 100 billion now that the stock's up.
I saw, as of the rejection, the article I read said 101 billion.
Yeah.
And they basically, what happens, he was rejected the first time based on a single shareholder who contested it, and in the Delaware court got rejected. So they went back and had a shareholder vote. Obviously, Elon and his brother Kimball could not vote because they have a large quantity of shares. 84% of shareholders said yes. You'd think as a shareholder they'd want to like watch those pennies, and no, 84% said yes. And then they took it back, and the court still rejected him, said it's still not fair. It doesn't matter what your shareholders say, it's not fair.
That's a tough one. If the shareholders voted for the pay package, and I mean, obviously he is the CEO of Tesla.
Technically, he was paid $0 in 2018 because he doesn't take cash bonus or salary. Crazy.
What did the stock do in 18? I don't remember.
I mean, it was a wild ride. Didn't they almost touch bankruptcy in 2019? So, I mean, obviously we know it's a super volatile stock, but if you start point to end point, it's done miraculously well.
Yeah. So we're talking about what's done best and worst, I guess, asset class wise since the election. So probably to nobody's surprise, China is essentially flat since the election. It was down a little bit afterwards, and it's kind of creeped its way back up a little bit. Gold down a little bit, almost 3%.
We've had a really strong dollar that's playing into emerging markets and gold as well.
I mean, I think there's an overwhelming fear out there that the incoming administration is just going to make everything really difficult for international trade.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I mean, we can't control what China does with Europe to a large degree. We can't control what they export to, Africa, but we're the number one importer, if I'm not mistaken, of Chinese goods. And certainly Mexican goods, and obviously Canadian goods, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, it seems like, and I didn't mention it, but developed international is also down a little bit since the election, where the S&P 500 is up almost about 6%, small caps up 7.5%. I mentioned Bitcoin and obviously Tesla. But so, I mean, there's this overwhelming concern that the incoming administration is going to make international trade significantly more difficult. And I think there's a large swath of people out there that are okay with that if it means that there's going to be a level or more level playing field a year from now, or 6 months from now, or in 5 years from now. I'm just not sure how that's going to work out in the next 6 months or in the next year, and we're going to have to wait and see, obviously, how these how these tariffs are added. Are they all come in at once? Are they gradual? Are they going to ratchet up based on how he feels on that particular day? And I think that's what some people are worried about from an international standpoint.
Yeah, and the thing with those, like, you see him using as a negotiating tactic right now, like with Canada and Mexico, because they don't import nearly as much as us. There's a crazy large trade balance difference between us and them. So we really do have a lot of leverage. We can hurt them a lot worse than they can hurt us. But I don't think, and this is just me speaking, being an optimist or a positive person, I don't think the intent is to hurt our neighbors. We just want them to do what we want them to do, and it's just negotiating. But we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier this week about some of the rare earth minerals that come in from China, and it certainly seems like they could be in play.
Yeah. So in 2023, they had restricted export of rare earth metals, these things we need in chips and several different very important technologies.
Batteries.
And they reiterated that, I guess, and specifically added, I guess, 2 or 3 more metals, I guess, to the
Is it that we
list.
just don't have this? They haven't been discovered here in the United States? Because I know that there's big mines out there that are doing the same thing. It just seems like we're not able to produce our own, and we have to go to China.
I think we probably do have some somewhere. The quantity may not be as great as, the rights they've booked in Africa, where they're getting a majority of it from. And we have a lot of regulations. It's tough to start a mine and get things going and just start digging up the earth. It's tough to do. It takes a lot of time to begin with, and then there's some red tape.
Well, we need to do something when it comes to that, because that is a significant negotiating tool on their end that we don't really have an answer for.
Yeah.
We can't just say, oh, well, you can stop it, or you can, put 1,000% tariff on it. I mean, that's not going to be great for R&D here in the U.S., even for batteries that are being produced now that we're putting into regular EVs.
Mhm.
And I don't know, certainly don't know how much of Tesla's battery packs are started, with rare earth minerals from China, but I got to imagine some of it.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at the odds on based on materials, they're getting a lot from China.
Yeah, no question about it. So all in all, though, November was a really good month for the stock markets in general. Small caps it took a wild ride, up almost 10% in November. S&P 500 up over 5%. So there's no question about it. November, the animal spirits were running, and everybody was buying.
Yeah, S&P 500 and NASDAQ are at all-time highs as we speak. Dow is just off. It's right there.
Yeah, 45,000.
Yeah, for the month, consumer discretionary was up almost 13%. Financials were up, I think, near 11%. And then you already mentioned small caps were between, I think, 10 and 11%. So big moves there, certainly.
Yeah. The one area that hasn't really performed too well since the election, it hasn't performed too well most of the year, but the overall bond market is only up about 3% for the year. And, I'm not sure how much rates are actually going to decline. I think the whole concept of, terminal rate being at 3% in a year or two, I think that's pushed back pretty dramatically. And the terminal rate being the end rate, where they want to see rates at the end of the cycle, I feel like it might be higher now than it was 6 months ago.
I think we're at like a coin flip now on a December 25 basis point hike. Obviously, that's a very small hike, and we're looking out, like you said, a year out to see where we're going to be, and then an ultimate terminal rate. But the hot jobs or JOLTS report, we get the jobs report in a couple days. The JOLTS report was kind of warm, signaled a little bit of strength. And I think that has us around or just below a coin flip for 25 basis points in December now.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like the economy is overheating, but there are some anecdotal things out there. Did you read about the crypto investor from China that bought the $6 million banana?
Yes, I did. I did see that.
So this guy, crypto investor, born in China, I think his name is Sun, Justin Sun. He paid a whopping $6 million for an art installation that basically was a banana that was taped to a wall. $6 million. And so this is the second time it's been sold. If I'm not mistaken, it was sold last year for about $100,000, and then obviously sold a week or two ago for over $6 million. So literally, what this guy bought at a Sotheby's auction was, because the banana that the original artist put out there obviously, got moldy and they threw it out, right? So what he bought was a roll of duct tape, a new banana that they bought on the street for 35 cents or $1.35 in New York, I'm sure. The roll of duct tape, and then the certificate of authenticity. $6 million.
Apparently, they went back and went to that fruit stand and are offering to buy and compensate them because of the vast difference. I guess the artist went to them and was like, all right, well, as a courtesy, we'll buy, X and X pounds of bananas to compensate you. And then the owner of the fruit stand is going to give it to the workers.
Yeah.
6.2 million.
So I don't know that the economy is overheating. There is a chance that we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. I mean, after the election, the Dow went up 1,000 points. Obviously, I just said we had a great November. And some of that stuff is, some of it went up for the right reasons, right? You talked about regulation and how hard it is to start a new mine. So in terms of like pricing things in, it seems like reduced regulation, some of that red tape, I don't want to say being thrown out, but being relaxed, that seems to be priced in after the election. And so we're getting to a situation which I find would be precarious, and for the stock market, maybe not for the economy itself, um, but from a stock market standpoint, you know, we know what the incoming administration is going to do, and the market has responded, right? That's the efficiency of the markets themselves. And so I feel like unless there's new information, and you and I were talking about it today, I mean, it is certainly possible that Trump comes in and puts a peace accord together in the Middle East, right? It is certainly possible. It's not out of the range of possibilities that he comes in and he somehow ends the Russia-Ukraine war. To me, that means that Ukraine is going to give up large swaths of land, if you want to call that, ending the war, and maybe it will be. I don't know how much those two things, if like day one he comes in and solves the Middle East problem, again, I don't think that'll happen, but it's possible.
He has mentioned Ukraine top of mind, that he could end that in a day. So I think that's a high priority for him to fulfill that promise. And again, I'm not going to get into the politics or geopolitical ramifications of what that result will be. But if there's no more people dying and missiles being launched in Ukraine, and maybe he goes back in and said, hey, 4 years ago, you signed the Abraham Accords, in reference to, Israel, and gets them on board to enforcing it. That we were talking in the frame of the dollar's been strong. Tariffs should make the dollar stronger. That's probably not good for international emerging markets or developed. But that's the caveat, is what if we then get peace, and then that question mark is raised off of Europe, and maybe Europe's freed up to get a better valuation. So it's something we'll have to keep monitoring for sure. But there's multiple questions and things at play that can affect those valuations.
Yeah, and as we said when you and I were talking earlier today, Europe is not in a great spot right at the moment. They are kind of hanging precariously on from an economic standpoint. You have the government in France, which is just clinging to power, if you will, and I
potentially being dissolved with that no confidence,
right? A vote of no confidence. I know that our institution here maybe isn't perfect, but when you look at the coalition governments that can be taken down by a no confidence vote in Europe, like Liz Truss, right? Everybody remembers
Didn't
her.
even make it a month.
12, I think it was like 12 days. It was like a Scaramucci, right? Like 12 days.
She made it one Scaramucci.
One Scaramucci. She made it. I think the lettuce lasted longer than her. That doesn't seem right from an elected official to be only there, less than a month or something like that. So I don't know that we're perfect, but the idea of these coalition governments crumbling and then just, booting somebody out, I don't know that that's good. You have Germany that's in a situation where they used to be the number one driver of European growth. And I mean, they're not falling apart or anything, but they're not growing.
Yeah. They're on the border of recessionary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we certainly have been, I don't know if the best house in a bad neighborhood, although our neighborhood's not that bad. The market's up almost 28% year to date. Even small caps that were certainly underperforming last year, and up until the beginning of the third quarter, underperforming, and they rallied back. Mid caps are up 20%. Small caps, depending on if you're looking at the Russell 2000, up 20%. S&P 600 is up almost 18%. I mean, taking those returns from an absolute standpoint, up 20%, I mean, that's not a bad neighborhood to be in.
Yeah.
Right? Bonds are the bad neighborhood to be in.
And I mean, obviously, you just mentioned bonds. In November, healthcare and materials affected by high price of the dollar. And then healthcare, obviously, we've got this RFK Jr. thing going on, and sort of the Doge.
What thing is that?
He's just unsure of many things in the medical community, we'll say.
Unsure.
And then we have Doge, who's probably Department of Governmental Efficiency, who's probably going to be looking at, say, Medicare, Medicaid, and how they can lower the costs there a little bit. So obviously healthcare and materials lagging makes sense. So a change of regime. We're seeing, things being affected clearly by the result of the election.
Healthcare doesn't, I mean, there's some standouts, right? Lilly with their GLP-1s and everybody that has a fat fighter has been doing really well. But for the rest of the healthcare world, there has not been a lot of standouts in companies or in the sectors themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the return would be on the healthcare sector if you backed out Lilly, but it's probably not great.
Total segue here. We'll mention it. A CEO of a large unit of United Health Group, the 12th or 13th largest company in the U.S., depending on what day you look at it. The head of their United Healthcare unit was just shot in Manhattan and killed.
Yeah.
Some wild stuff. I mean, we don't need to go down a rabbit hole on that per se, but
we did after we learned about it. This morning.
Yeah.
What did you tell me about their claims?
They had a very high.
Chris went down the rabbit hole on a conspiracy theory on this.
They have a very high claim denial rate.
Yeah.
In the U.S. So on the graph that I could find, which was unrelated to obviously this instance, unfortunately happened today. They had the worst.
So are you suggesting here that a man was assassinated or murdered because of a denial on a healthcare claim?
People do irrational things when the health of a loved one's involved. I mentioned think about John Q, the movie with Denzel Washington. People do wild things when a loved one is affected by something.
Yeah. Well, certainly
it's not out of the realm of possibility.
No, it's not. I certainly hope that the authorities, apparently they tracked him into Central Park, but they lost him. Which I'm sure we can make fun of, but hopefully they will find this guy and bring him to justice regardless. And, if in fact it was a rejection of a claim or something, that would be kind of nutty.
Yeah. I mean, it seems
like it was
crazy anyways.
It seems like it was definitely targeted though.
Yeah.
I mean, this wasn't some random act of violence. The person was standing there waiting for him to come out of the hotel and basically shot him point blank when he came out.
Didn't rob him or anything, just had a vendetta.
That's how, if I'm not mistaken, that's what happened to John Lennon at his building. The guy standing there waiting for him either to come or to go, and found him. And New York could be scary at sometimes, right? I mean, all big cities can be scary when you hear stuff like that.
There is obviously another notable person, Art Cashin, who passed away. I think we were talking, you had a good quote from him.
I just remember Art back in the day. I started investing in the 90s, and I think it was 94 or 95 where the Dow Jones hit 4,000 for the first time. And it was the first time that I remember them busting out the Dow 4,000 hats. I mean, we're talking, I think it was 95-ish, somewhere around there. So I remember seeing him there, and then he had a really nice quote, an interesting quote somewhere around the global financial crisis, and it was
a different take of "Don't bet against America."
Yeah, right. And so that's my quote that I always say: "Don't bet against America." But he essentially said, don't bet on the end of the world. Even if you're right, good luck finding a counterparty to settle up with. Which means, listen, if you think the end of the world is coming, who's that trade going to work out with?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I always took that to heart, but I'm sure he'll be missed. I have not seen. I don't know when the last time he was on the floor of the exchange. I don't think it's been recently.
Well, he started in 1959 on the exchange floor at a brokerage firm, and he was only 17 years old, and he basically never left.
Yeah. Yeah,
one of the most famous. He was called the Wall Street Walter Cronkite. So that's, you can imagine how he was respected or revered.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember Mark Haynes. He was another one that was with us for a long, long time, and he passed away shortly after the global financial crisis. But I always thought Art and Mark Haynes were those two guys when you turned on CNBC and they were having, the Dow down 500 points back in the day, or nowadays with 1,000 points, the market in turmoil. You'd hear these guys' voices, and for whatever they were saying, they had this calming effect on you. They were the stalwarts that have been around forever. And so Mark Haynes was strictly a journalist. Art Cashin was actually a floor trader and floor operations, I think, maybe for UBS when he left. But I mean, the knowledge out there that he leaves behind is pretty. There's a gap there.
I read a CNN story to catch up on him a little bit, and the third paragraph started off with, "He was a great drinker and storyteller." So he must have been a really fun guy to be around.
They always say don't meet your heroes. I definitely would have liked to have a cocktail with him though. Yeah, absolutely. So what else do we have? We want to talk inflation data. I know we're always bringing that up. It doesn't seem to be really moving too much one way or the other.
Yeah, the numbers have been in line, both on CPI and the most recent number, PCE. So a little bit higher on core than just the headline, but they were both in line. They slightly ticked up. The 3-month moving average is slightly upwards, but it doesn't look like anything to be concerned about. We've had a couple of these little blips where it's turned back up just to fall back down. And I think the end trend is still down until we get some maybe political moves.
Tariffs. Removing workers.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, it seems that inflation is still trending down.
Yeah,
it's in check. It doesn't mean that prices are going to come down. It just means the rate of increase has stabilized, under 3% ish.
You would think a strong dollar might help that in the next month or two. We'll see.
Yeah. There's definitely some questions to be answered on the tariffs. And I don't know that anybody knows. I don't know if the incoming president knows what he's going to do until he says it. Sometimes it seems like he does. Sometimes he just seems to go with what's going on at the moment. But, I had an interesting experience. I was out in Portland right before Thanksgiving and at a client event. And I was being introduced, chief market strategist, and glad handing and talking to people. And I could tell within about 6 seconds where they were on the political spectrum. I would get introduced, and the first thing they would say was either something to the effect of, "I'm really concerned about what's going to happen in January," or "I'm really concerned about what's going to happen in next year." And then there was a whole nother group of people, and I didn't do the math on counting it up, but there was a whole nother group of people that were like, "I am really excited about 2025." When they saw my title and we started talking about it. And it was really interesting because it seems like where you are politically is really, really affecting your mental health at this point in time. And I've had people ask me, is Social Security going to disappear? Is it going to go away? I'm really concerned about it. And I mean, there's been comments that have alluded to something like that. But I just think it's wherever you are politically is where you think the market's going to go.
Yeah.
And so if you were really hot on Trump and you put all of your chips in November, you did really well. If you were not and you took money out of the market, right, you didn't do so well. And we know the market's up pretty dramatically in November. So I always go back to don't bet against America. I always go back to, don't invest emotionally. And I should add to that, don't invest politically.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if we start to see things that aren't going to help the economy, and and when I say that, I mean long-term wise, not in a day or in a month or something like that. It's reasonable to make changes to your portfolio or your risk tolerance based on that. But I don't think it's reasonable to make changes to your investment portfolio based on your political leanings on what's going on. To me, that just seems...
It just doesn't... There's clear and dry cut stats on that. It doesn't benefit you to do it.
Yeah, it doesn't. So. And I think unless you have something else, I think that's where we're going to end it today.
Just a couple quick things, I guess. Yeah. Spirit Airlines declared bankruptcy.
They don't have a first class. That's their problem.
Why. Yeah, that's where you get the extra bucks. They declared bankruptcy, and obviously there's a little bit of a hoo-ha being done around on that because they were bought out until the government rejected it with JetBlue, and ultimately now I'm sure someone will buy up the remnants, but as of right now, they don't have a buyer, and technically, people are going to lose some jobs.
Can we stop for a second and
Yes.
go back to that? Because
Yes.
they do have the big seat, and you and I have been on that.
That's true. Well, what do they call it? It's not first
It's
class.
not first class, but it's a big seat. You and I
Yeah,
actually took
yeah.
it to Orlando,
Yeah.
right? It was Frontier doesn't have a first class,
Okay.
and I just read that they were adding the first class onto Frontier. I try to stay away from Frontier, although I have been on it. I mean, it's cheap. It's really narrow. I'm not the smallest guy.
I'm not going to go into the story, but I had one horror story from flying Frontier to Cancun, and I'll never do it again. Let's just put it that way.
So I don't remember which one it is. I might have said this before. The last time that I flew one of those, the lady was making the pre-flight announcements, and she said, going through the normal stuff, and she said, and for everybody who vowed they would never fly us again, welcome back.
We were on that flight together, and I died laughing. I'm like, yep, she got us.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So I told you I was out in Portland, Oregon. I flew out there. I flew out of Newark like a week and a half ago, and I have pre-check. And so there was a person in line that was kind of he wasn't into having his picture taken. And, I was like, I don't care. It doesn't really matter to me. I just think to myself, do whatever it is. Let the technology just pour over me so I can bust through that line as quick as possible. I don't really care what it is. I just want to move through security. I don't want to be stuck there. Even with TSA, Newark has some pretty long lines. And so you want to take a picture of my face?
We talk about the time value of money all the time, but what's the money value of time? And that's exactly what you're getting at.
Right.
I don't want to stand in lines a second longer than I have to.
It used to be after 9/11, it was like you had to give yourself like 2.5 hours before your flight left. And if you're flying from Philly now, they've altered that a lot over the last 15 years, or even longer, last 25 years. But nowadays, I mean, I can get to most airports about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half before the flight leaves.
It's gone quicker. Yeah,
it's gotten quicker.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's technology, right? That's the efficiency that we always talk about, whether it's AI or just general improvements in productivity. Like, if you could get me there 45 minutes before my flight left, I would pay extra for that.
You guys had to wait for me when we were leaving Nashville because they pulled my bag because I had Sour Patch Kids in there, and they're like inspecting the bag, making sure I didn't open it and stick something else in there. I'm just like, I have a sugar problem. Just come on, guys.
And what if you did?
Let me through.
What if you did do that?
Confiscated it.
I mean, like,
but I'm just like, come on, guys. Doing too much.
Yeah.
One other thing, Pat Gelsinger, we've been talking about embattled Intel and how they just got booted from the Dow Jones, and they just separated with CEO.
Voluntold.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So they went separate directions. Sure, Pat Gelsinger will land on his feet, but just didn't go well with his 4-ish year stint with Intel.
I mean, Intel is one of those companies that has obviously been around. We talked about Gordon Moore, co-founding Intel in the 60s and early 70s. And, it's like, I don't want to chalk them up to a Kodak. Intel is in a lot of products, especially desktops and things that we use on a regular basis. But I don't know how many of their chips are in my phone. I don't know how many of their chips are in smart televisions, right?
Yeah, that's their core business is PC chips, and it's not the high-end PCs. It's just sort of your run-of-the-mill, do basic job functions type chips.
Yeah.
And they tried to, I guess, do the foundry business, and that's where sort of they've fallen behind, and that's where most of their investment's been.
Yeah. Well, I hope they pull it together. I still know a lot of people that love Intel and love the business, but they have not been able to perform. And then they haven't been able to perform on an absolute basis. But then when you look at them on a relative basis against NVIDIA,
yeah,
I mean, it's just
tough comparison.
Yeah, that is a tough comparison. But even against, like a Motorola or Global Foundries or any of those other chip manufacturers, they just really haven't been able to get it together. Their legacy business is not performing so well, and they haven't been able to ramp up their AI business yet.
with the success that like a GE had with spinning off business units, I would suspect that's the route it's going to go rather than someone just buying the whole kit and caboodle. Maybe the foundry business getting sold to one group and, PC business remaining, something like that.
Yeah. I don't know. We should come back to this at a later podcast, but I don't know what the percentage of people actually going out and buying desktops is, or laptops for that matter. I mean, I guess everybody still has to have a desktop or a laptop, and Intel most likely is going to be in there. NVIDIA's also probably going to be in there, and a few other companies. But I mean, where are we going to be in 10 or 15 years from desktops? I guess everybody's still always going to have one.
Yeah, I mean, I know when I bought about 2 years ago now, I specifically switched out the Intel chip and got a Ryzen chip from AMD. I'm sure younger folks look for stuff like that. People who are really into computers are looking for stuff like that, and that's another place that maybe over time they're going to even lose some of their core business. That was just my personal preference from the little bit of research I did. So it's a tough area to be in where I don't think their balance sheet's very strong, so it's hard for them to make the proper investments to catch up.
Yeah. If you had asked me in 2000 or 1995 where Intel was going to be in 2024, I would have told you, well, it'll be to the moon.
Top of the world, yeah.
Right? Top of the world. And I don't want to say it's failing, but it's
a slow bleed.
Yeah, it's a slow bleed. It's not doing so well. All right, well, we'll come back to Intel and the chip guys next time. For the Market Enthusiast and for Good Life, I'm Noah Brooks and Chris Needs. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we have our next holiday coming up. Try not to eat too much, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly.